Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Hoss. I'm doing my Kang cool sitting pose right now. You know, say what you will about Kang the Conqueror. He may never be as iconic a villain as Thanos was, but I do think that he sits in chairs cooler than Thanos did. So props to him. But in this video, we need to talk about how, you go away for a little long weekend, President's Day weekend, and when you come back, it's the start of Phase 5. Ant-Man and the Wasp QUANTUMANIA comes out over the weekend, and we got movement once again in the market. So in this video, we're going to talk about Kang the Conqueror. We're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp QUANTUMANIA. There are probably going to be some spoilers in this video here today. So if you guys don't, want it to be spoiler, if you haven't seen the movie and you want to avoid that, maybe you can circle back to this video at some point in the future, because we got to talk about some of the books that relate to what had happened in the film this past weekend. And no matter how you feel about the movie, whether it's bad, the worst movie you've ever seen in your life, you liked it, no matter what the case is, Marvel's going to the dumps, DC's taking over, the comic book market, frankly, doesn't care. But before I get into it, if you guys could drop me a like or comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, do those things I would appreciate. But let's get into this video here today. Now, we have to talk about this movie. We have to talk about a few different elements to this film, because I think there are interesting stories going on in the comic book market. This is going to be, not quite a review of the movie. I always think about, for myself, it's not really my job to share with you guys my feelings on the movie, right? I would like to do that, but at the same time, that's not what you come here for. Let me know if you guys are down with me doing movie reviews, when they eventually come out, because I feel like they're sort of related. But what I do think I can talk about that you guys might find helpful is, some of the books that have moved in relation to the film, and most specifically the post-credit scenes, which of course, as we know, the post-credit scenes tend to tease what is to be coming in the future. And I think that this is, an interesting element as we kind of continue to move on here into our comic book collecting journeys. Even with everything going on in the MCU, even with a lot of the ratings for this last film being a lot lower than what you typically see with some of the Marvel movies, although the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is actually pretty high, relatively speaking, it is really interesting to see that, the comic book market is still there to pick up whatever spec books are going to be moving. Speculators go and speculate. It doesn't matter if the movie is good or bad. It doesn't matter if it's DC, if it doesn't matter if it's Sony. It doesn't matter if Marvel is going to be, a dying franchise. Comic book collectors are still going to FOMO into books. That's just the way that it is. That's just the way that it is. So in this video, I want to talk about how it's interesting to see that there's been volume of movement of sales for a lot of big key books, and also, of course, a lot of the spec books, although we haven't seen, a big increase in numbers overall. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on, because that's going to connect to my interest rate video that I put out last week. And of course, everybody fell asleep watching it. But the first thing I want to talk about here is Avengers number 8. Of course, you guys know this book by now. First appearance of Kang the Conqueror. Now, here's what's really interesting about this is, time and time again, we've seen opportunities for people to, buy this book or FOMO into this book, from all the way back when we got the Jonathan Majors announcement, to when we saw him in Loki, to when there was the announcement of Avengers Kang Dynasty, to when we got the Ant-Man trailers. Time and time again, there's been diminishing returns, right? You've seen less and less FOMO movement for this book. But one of the things I thought was so interesting is that coming off of this weekend, we actually saw a pretty high volume of sales for Avengers number 8. This is just me kind of flipping through all of the potential days for sales of this book that would have occurred since this movie has been out. And actually, if I go all the way down here, basically to February 17th, that's a pretty full page of sales for Avengers number 8. Now, to put it into perspective, this is a book that, you might see 1 or 2 sales a day. But during the course of this weekend, you actually saw the volume increase to about, 3 or 4 sales for this book a day. And I think that that's an interesting thing. That's definitely a good sign. And it does show that, even if the movie doesn't get good reviews or you didn't think it was the best movie ever, people really do believe in Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Kang the Conqueror. People are feeling like, hey, you know what? Maybe this movie wasn't the best, but he he did a really great job, and I'm very interested to see this character more, and I'm willing to pull the trigger on this book. Now, that being said, it's not like we got record high sale prices for this. Here you see a 4.5. This one happened to finish at a live auction and finished around the $800 range, which is, a little bit lower, kind of right in line to where the 4.5s have been going. Here at the 9.2 grade, you see this one finished at a live auction for $4,700, which again is a big sale, but not quite the record price for that particular book. Let me go back here, 9.2. If we go here to the 9.2, we can see the 30-day moving with that $4,700 sale is now, of course, the $4,700 price. But of course, this is a lot less than what the record price was in July of 2021 at the $11,000 range. But like we've been, analyzing with my, charts right here with the Silver Age Index, this is still higher than that of the 2020 price when it was selling for, $3,000, $4,000, $3,600, etc. So the book is still floating above that 2020 price, not necessarily meaning, the peak values, of course, that it was in 2021, but, some of the sales that we got, like this 4.5 that I just showed you guys, around the $750 range, still well above the 2020 price. And then down here at the 2.0 grade, you can see that, at the low levels where people kind of just want to get into the book, this is a book that actually had a little bit of a spike up this past weekend for a $500 sale when the last sold for this was $330 in December. So depending on what grade you're looking at, this is definitely a book that, people are interested in this thing, and people are, kind of still buying into the Kang hype. People are thinking that this could be, a character for the future. I mean, look at this massive sale right here, 4.5 Stanley Signature selling for $1,600. I mean, that's double the price of what a 4.5 would go for. So people still pretty bullish on Avengers number 8, which was, surprising to me. Again, like I was saying, I would have thought anyone who would have wanted the book before this weekend would have already bought it. But it does go to show that there are some collectors out there that saw the film and thought to themselves, hey, you know what? Kang is actually pretty cool. Let me pull the trigger and pick up this book. Now, the other one we have to talk about is, of course, this one right here, Fantastic Four 19. I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I think if you guys, are still watching this video and haven't seen the movie yet, you can assume what had happened in the post-credit scene. But this, of course, is the first appearance of Rama Tut. Now, Rama Tut is a Kang the Conqueror variant who conquered Egypt and ran into the Fantastic Four, and we may or may not have seen this character appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA. And I think that this is really interesting too, where you can just see, if I just scroll down, for the weekend sales, you can see that there's quite a high volume of books that sold right here, Fantastic Four number 19. And again, this is one of those interesting things where it's not that this is like the most expensive book ever, but these are, kind of Silver Age keys that people really, really do enjoy. And I mean, we're talking, $800, $300, $1,000, etc. And that's generally pretty impressive that, over the course of a weekend, people are thinking to themselves, yeah, let me just, impulse buy that Fantastic Four 19 book. You can see, again, to put it in perspective, maybe this was a book that had one sale a day, generally speaking, or one every other day. But this is quite a lot. This is a pretty high volume for this book. Again, like Avengers number 8, this 6.0 sale at the $875 range isn't the record high price for this book. I don't necessarily anticipate that we're going to be seeing many record high prices, at least until the interest rate starts to get cut. When we have more money into the system, that's when money can easily be thrown around, and we're going to be inflating all of these comic book prices. But what we are still seeing is that there is interest. The floor is still pretty steady, staying above that 2020 price, and the demand is there. There are still people who, even if they don't, think that the Marvel movies are shooting on all cylinders, comic book collectors are still interested in having these keys and having them represent whatever they are seeing on screen. Additionally, Avengers number 10, you guys also know this book by now, first appearance of Immortus. We may or may not have seen this character appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA, and like the Rama Tut one and like the Avengers number 8, you can see that there's a pretty high volume of sales for this book overall, which again is a lot higher than what you would have seen on kind of a normal day before we had this movie. You can see, I don't know, just counting it really quickly, around 10, 12 sales or so, which is a pretty decent amount for a Silver Age book. And that really, to me, is kind of the first main takeaway that, I wanted to talk about here in this video today. And that's, this idea of, comic book collectors and what is going on in the movies doesn't always have to sync up. Generally speaking, of course, the pop culture element, if the movie is really good, that's going to increase the demand. I mean, it makes sense. We're all susceptible to FOMO. But, it doesn't, the movies don't have to be, Avengers Endgame level for comic book collectors to still want to buy books. I mean, if that were the case, we would have never seen any DC books pre-James Gunn sell out there in the market. Even Morbius books, were selling out there in the market. Even Venom books have been moving in the market. And I do still think that, that's something to keep in mind. Even if you feel like the MCU is dying and it's just not as good as what it once was, there's still going to be people out there in the market that are buying these comic books. And so let's kind of finish it out here because I do think that this is really interesting. A lot of other Kang stuff moving out there in the market. This one is a book. I've actually talked about this one many times on the channel. I did spec videos talking about this one, but this is Avengers Annual number 21, first full appearance of the Anachronauts, and also first appearance of a character, a Kang variant known as Victor Timely. This is definitely going to be one of those books. Oh, got ahead of myself. This is definitely going to be one of those books that appears on all of the hot lists this week. You're going to see this all over it because there was a super high volume of sales for this one. And this is kind of one of those instances, like I compare it to, the Eternals film, where a lot of people didn't like the Eternals movie, but when we got the appearance of Star Fox at the end of it in the post-credit scene, I mean, that absolutely blew up the comic book market. What is it, Captain Marvel number 28? That was a book that went haywire, and we saw, lots of FOMO, lots of copies being sold. And now similarly, we're seeing a lot of people FOMO into Avengers Annual number 21 as well. It's the perfect example of a book, 90s book, high print count, not very expensive before the movie. This is the perfect example of a book that can absolutely go crazy, where before the movie, maybe it was something that was selling around the $5 to $10 range. Now it's easily a $20, $25 book. But I don't think that that's going to last. So if you're somebody out there who's interested in this thing, know that probably in a few weeks' time, I probably would suspect that this book goes back down to that $15 range. And then when we see him again in, Loki season 2, it might have a spike back up. Now, the other book that has been moving quite a bit is Avengers number 267. Again, a book that, is the first appearance of the Council of Kangs. Maybe there is a reason why this book popped up over the weekend. This is another one that has been, super, super hot all throughout, these last couple of years, people speculating on this thing. It was a book that was hitting highs of $50, kind of fell back down to the $20 range. But after this weekend, it's now kind of popped back up to the sort of that $35 to $40 price point. Again, another book that 100% will be showing up on all of the various hot lists there are in the market. And then the last interesting book to talk about is this one right here, All New, All Different Avengers number 1. This is the first appearance of a character known as Mr. Griffin, who is another variant of Kang the Conqueror, and the CEO of Kang Enterprises, spelled Qeng. We saw that Easter egg in Loki. And this is another book that now there's a lot of rumors that this variant is going to be playing a part in the Loki film. And I think after what we saw in ANTMAN and the WASP QUANTUMANIA, there's a lot of confirmation that, yeah, okay, we're going to see every single Kang variant there is in the MCU. So all of the books related to, Kang's variants are definitely going to be very, very popular. And you can see, again, another book that right now is still only selling around that $5 to $10 range. But generally speaking, you're seeing a very, very high volume for this particular key. And I would imagine that, when and if we see this character show up in, Loki season 2 or wherever they decide to do with them, that's going to be a book that probably hits that $15, $20 price point. But then, like all books do, once you're over the hump of that, it's going to reset back down to, whatever the floor price could be, probably another $5 to $10 book. But that's kind of what we saw this weekend in terms of what has been moving out there in the market. A lot of Kang books, everything Kang related has been moving a lot. I do think that there were some books still related to Ant-Man, some of the Ant-Man keys that had some movement as well. But clearly Kang, if you saw the movie, was sort of the star of the show. He definitely seemed to be the character that, Marvel is pushing the most, obviously because he's going to be the big bad for the next couple of phases. And, we're seeing, the comic book market react to that. We're seeing a lot of faith be put into a lot of these books. Now, with all that being said, I don't think we're in a position where any of these books are going to be hitting record prices anytime soon. If you guys remember, again, I already mentioned it, but the video I did this last week where I was talking about the correlation of comic book values and interest rates, I think is probably the biggest factor into the actual values rather than, just seeing them in a movie and people losing their minds and having FOMO. I think it's really about how much liquidity is there going to be in these markets, and can that inflate the prices of, things like comic books. I think when we get to interest rate cuts, which, who knows when that's really going to be, maybe we get to 2024, maybe we get to 2025, we'll start to cut again. And that's going to be the thing that really inflates the comic book prices. And I do think that it is interesting that, that's probably also going to be the time when we get, Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret War. So it's my prediction that when we get to those movies, not only will there be FOMO, which plays some role in the demand of comic books and the values of comic books, but when we're talking about just having the general macroeconomic market have a lot of money in there, I think that that's going to be the thing that really sets off the comic book market. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. That was me just talking about what we saw move this past weekend. What did you guys think of Ant-Man and the Wasp: QUANTUMANIA? For me, I thought it was okay. It was not a very good movie, not a masterpiece. Definitely not a masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, I mean, it was like, Marvel fast food. If you like it, if you like Marvel, you're going to enjoy it. I don't know, maybe I can get more in depth with my ratings for this. I've actually wanted to do an MCU tier list and rate all the movies. I would definitely put this one on the bottom half, but it's still not the worst movie of all the Marvel movies that have come out. Anyways, that's all I got for this video. What did you guys think of the movie? What do you guys think about some of these Kang books out there in the market? Have you been picking them up? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and I'll see you in the next video.